Folks, Reverend Robert Turner was the pastor at a historic church in Tulsa there in Greenwood. We, of course, were there last year, of course, when we were in town for the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa race riots. In fact, yesterday was the 108th birthday of one of those three survivors. The folks there in Tulsa, they have been fighting to get reparations for what happened. There are survivors, there are descendants when Greenwood was completely destroyed, but the state of Oklahoma has refused to do so. The city of Tulsa has refused to do so. Reverend Robert Turner is now the pastor at Empowerment Temple in Baltimore, and he began this morning, he's actually on a walk from Baltimore to the nation, to the White House, regarding this issue of reparations. He joins us right now as he is walking. Pastor, how far are you away from the White House?
I'm 3 miles from the White House right now.
So you started what time this morning?
I started at 3:20, met at the church, and started marching at 4 a.m. We prayed, had devotional, and we started marching from 4, and now we are 3 miles away.
Now, how often are you doing this? Because this is not the first time you've already done it.
No, we did it last month. We're doing it this month. We're doing it every month until repair is done.
All right. And when you say repair is done, what does that mean?
That means that first and foremost, we need to have a serious conversation and we need to pass H.R. 40 that's passed right now, the House. And if that does not pass, we need to have some serious conversations with the president on signing an executive order to bring that about.
Now, as I said, you were the pastor of the church in Tulsa, and you've got folks there who, frankly, who've done nothing on this very issue.
It's terrible, and you're absolutely right. Tulsa, the site of the worst race massacre in American history. And as you know, every Wednesday in Tulsa, I went out to City Hall protesting the lack of repair for 3 years, and also advocating the excavation of the mass graves, which is currently underway. And so it's a sad stain on the history of Tulsa and the history of America that we have so many patriots, because African Americans have been patriots. We're celebrating Veterans Day today. The first person to die for this country was a black man. We've been patriots, we've been scientists, we've been doctors, we've been lawyers, and we've never been given repair. Meanwhile, we are canceling people now because they haven't apologized, but black folks haven't gotten an apology in over 400 years.
You're a member of the National African American Reparations Commission. You also have in Coburg, you got other groups out there. And one of the things you mentioned, H.R. 40, and you've got some people, and I deal with them all the time on social media, they say that's a joke, that's a waste of time. And I'm going, well, okay, there's a start. And if you think that's a joke, it has 217 co-sponsors. I said, well, what in the hell is your idea?
Exactly. My same response. I, for one, and I respect those individuals. I actually include those that they're talking about just the sentence of slaves, but it has to be more than just that because white supremacy has impacted more than just the sentence of slaves. If you've been black in this country for 2 minutes, you felt the impact of racism. Now, when we talk about the calculation of how much folks should get, it should possibly be commensurate to the length of time your family has been in this country, but to just write people off because they weren't here, because their ancestors weren't here doing slavery, I think it's divisive.
And so you're making the march to the White House. Have you received any feedback? Have you talked to anybody in the White House? And when you get to the White House, what are you going to do?
What I'm going to do, thank you for asking, we have a wreath of 400 carnations that symbolizes the 400 years of oppression that our people have suffered in this country. And that wreath will be laid at the gate of the White House, at the fence of the White House. We will pray, we will read scripture, and we will depart. Roland, as you know, is a man of faith. This is a spiritual movement for us. Before the Israelites got the land of Jericho, they walked around the wall 7 times. And we during this march, I'm praying in deep conversation with God, because as we seek reparations from America, I also think we need to mentally repair ourselves and our minds from the shackles of white supremacy and colonialism.
But you obviously want to get the attention of the White House. How do you do so?
Yes, absolutely. So the hope is just that we have a grassroots movement now that's actually starting to reach out. Today, I listed 4 things people to do, and one of those things was to contact their elected official. and to let them know that they support reparations. And as we start this drumbeat to going, we definitely believe that it will reach the ears of the president. There have been conversations I've had with others as we form strategy that publicly I'm not at liberty to share, but just know that there's a lot going on behind the scenes. But this is a part of an even larger strategy.
All right, then, Pastor Robert Turner, we surely appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, brother. Keep up the great work.
All right, will do. Appreciate it. My panel, folks, is Michael Imhotep, host of the African History Network show, Matt Manning, civil rights attorney, Danae Joseph, immigrant rights activist. Glad you are all three with us. Michael, I'll start with you. Again, what you heard me ask there, in terms of, how do you get their attention? And it is quite interesting when I look at these folks, and again, they're always commenting on social media, always on my page, and they're hollering and screaming that HR 40 is a joke, it's too weak, it's irrelevant. But I keep also asking, well, how do you think, if you're saying that's weak, and then if you're trashing Democrats, and then some people are saying no vote until we get a check, then I'm going, yeah, but you need the politicians to vote on the check, which means you kind of got to vote. I mean, it's like all of these things all over the place, and they literally don't make sense. You have to. I don't care what you want to get. There has to be an actual political strategy to get there if you're trying to get it through the political system.
Well, Roland, it's good to see you again, man, and it's good to have seen you in person on Tuesday as well for the marathon broadcast. I respect what the pastor is doing. I respect those involved in the reparations movement. Some of my teachers are involved with it in Cobra. But first and foremost, brother, we need to learn how to make legal arguments. And unfortunately, this may go outside the circumference of some people's awareness. Unfortunately, a lot of these arguments for reparations are not legal arguments. OK, and what I mean by that is if you study the Black Freedmen Indian treaties of 1866, and Demario Solomon Simmons is working with Representative Maxine Waters to get that enforced. Those Africans that were enslaved by the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians, they actually got some reparations. They got some land. They got membership in Native American nations. These are treaties that are still being enforced right now for those what are known as the 5 civilized tribes of Native Americans. But many of those Africans were pushed out of those treaties and their land was taken away. I would encourage the brother to research, 1, the Black Freedmen Indian treaties of 1866, 2, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1 of the U.S. Constitution. And the reason why I say that is because that helps you to lay a legal foundation for repairing the damage of the legacy of slavery. And what I mean by that is because March 2nd, 1807, the U.S. Congress abolished the international transatlantic slave trade. The international transatlantic slave trade means bringing Africans into the country to enslave them. It went into effect January 1st, 1808. The reason why it went into effect in 1808 is because if you read Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1, and you can go to archives.gov, the U.S. Archives, U.S. National Archives, or LOC.gov, Library of Congress, and read it. It tells you that the earliest that the international transatlantic slave trade can be abolished is 1808. Now, all the Africans that were brought in from January 1st, 1808 through July 1860, when the Clotilda came into Alabama, all that's illegal based upon federal law. And in the court cases, to back up your legal argument, one of the strongest court cases is a U.S. Supreme Court case of 1841, the United States versus the Amistad slave. Those Africans were given their freedom because the U.S. Supreme Court ruled, number one, it was illegal for that ship to come into U.S. waters because the international transatlantic slave trade had been abolished. 2, based upon international treaties, it was illegal for them to be captured in Sierra Leone. 3, they were given their freedom because the U.S. Supreme Court ruled they were never slaves, and it ruled that they had the right to take up arms on that ship. Now, that helps to lay a legal foundation. This is federal law, and you can see court cases to back up your legal argument. I love my brothers involved in the reparations movement, but saying that we were enslaved for 246 years, therefore our ancestors deserve a check, therefore we deserve a check or something like that. I agree with repairing the damage, but what law are you citing Listen to me, please, everybody. What law are you citing? What law are you citing that slaves were supposed to be paid? You're not making a legal argument.
Well, first of all, you got to have but Matt, you got to have a legal argument and a political argument and a political strategy.
I agree.
Yeah,
Matt?
I agree.
Yeah, I think Michael's right. I think the difficulty, though, is a lot of those legal arguments are predicated on a basic moral foundation. And I mean that to say, look at the reparations for Japanese Americans who were interned, right? Then the intern camps in the 40s. There was an actual reparation scheme. And I think what Michael's essentially getting to, and what everyone is getting to, is the reality is the government does not want to figure out how to give us reparations. So the legal arguments are important. But I've thought about this a million times, and to me, it seems like a basic equal protection argument. The idea that you can have multiple groups of people in this country who have been aggrieved, some of whom the government has thought it was appropriate to figure out a reparation scheme for, and the others it has not, creates a basic problem of disparate treatment among people. So the legal arguments are important, but they have to be founded on a basic moral responsibility to do the right thing. And we see that our government does not feel that basic moral responsibility to do that, which is why every time the reparations conversation comes up, we get mired in conversations of how black do you have to be? How long do you have to have been here? Does it apply to Pan-African diasporic peoples or only African Americans who were born here in generations of slaves, from enslaved people, rather than thinking of the entire country was built on 400 years of not only slavery, but unpaid labor. How do we right this wrong? And until we as a country, address that morally, the legal arguments won't matter, because the legal arguments to me are pretty easy to make. And they can be conceptualized a lot of different ways that they've been conceptualized. It comes down to them not wanting to give us reparations. It's that simple. And no matter how, interesting and how novel and brilliant the legal argument, none of it will ever have any effect unless and until there's that moral responsibility that we have not found yet.
And Danae, again, what I keep saying to these people, and they get so upset at me, and I keep laying out, if you do not have a political strategy, if you don't understand how to move things down the halls of Congress, you ain't getting jack. You can yell, holler, and scream, cut the check, tangibles all day, but you cannot demand something of a political structure and you have an absence of a political strategy.
I absolutely agree. And the reason that I agree is it was already a struggle for us to get $1,200 stimulus checks. So can you imagine people hearing about millions and billions of dollars to give to the descendants of enslaved African people? They do not want to hear that, right? So I think there is a way that we could ask for reparations. And that way that we ask for reparations is making very specific, tangible requests as far as access to resources, right? Making sure that people have access to home ownership, making sure that the descendants of enslaved African people have access to institutions of higher learning, right? Just being able to bridge the gaps and the divides that exist in the United States of America, because folks aren't going to want to give us the millions and billions of dollars in which we deserve as a result of the enslavement of our people, right? But you're absolutely right. Political strategy is everything. If it was so much of a fight for us to be able to get stimulus dollars for a pandemic that we're currently under, you can only imagine the tooth and nail fighting that we're going to have to do just to be able to get reparations. Now, in my mind, there's no doubt that we deserve reparations. And there's no doubt, seeing as though the people who enslaved us were able to get reparations before we were, right? They were able to get reparations for their loss of property. That is a fact. So if they were able to get reparations for their quote unquote loss of property, being us, our bodies, then why shouldn't we, as the individuals who had to deal with the enslavement and then, of course, subsequently the generations to come and the traumatization that is played within our communities, and not just the trauma that it's played in our communities, but the long-term impact. As a result of our enslavement, we weren't given the access to opportunities. We weren't given the same equity that other individuals individuals there's people who literally built wealth in this country off of the backs of enslaved people, and they were given opportunity simply because of that. So why shouldn't we now get reparations? But you're absolutely right. There's a way to do that. There's a strategy that needs to be played. But then I also agree that some folks are just fed up, and so they're trying to withhold as much as possible until we could get tangible, actionable wins, right? Because it's not enough to continue to give our votes and get nothing in return, or to not feel as though our voices are being heard and listened to. So what does Dr. King say? Writing is the voice of the oppressed. So you're going to continue to see people show up and show out until it is that we get what we want, which is tangible wins and not just promises.
Well, again, as I say to folks, you better have a strategy, and you have to execute that strategy. So Pastor's going to be doing that march every single month, and then we'll see what that happens in other events as well. All right, folks, back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
We are in sunny South Dallas. The election is coming up. It's super important that folks know who they are voting for, but more importantly, what they are voting for. Y'all, we got the free shirts and free lunch right over here.
Freedom is our birthright. No matter what we're up against, we're sending a message in Dallas and Texas and in the country. We won't back down. That's what this bus tour is all about.
The housing cost is one of the most capitalized areas that we have found. People who are marginalized, that are brown and black, we are suffering the most, and I think that we have the biggest vote and the biggest impact in this election.
I'm voting for affordable housing, for sure.
We should not be paying the cost of a utility failure because our elected officials are too proud to say we need help.
I know that we can bring out our people to vote. It's a part of our birthright. Right. It's a part of our heritage, and surely it's a part of our present and part of our future.
That's right. That's what's up. And we won't black down. Forward that message to 5 friends, because in that message, it's got links to how to get registered, how to check your registration status.
Like I said, 2:30 we'll start rendezvousing right here on this street.
I am voting to let our voice be heard in the rural communities that, hey, we are people too. There are things that we need.
Free shirts, free food, and lots of power.
We are in Longview, Texas, where Black Voters Matter, 365.
Whatever type of oppression a white supremacist throws our way, we will not black down. We are in relentless pursuit of liberation of our people.
Freedom is liberation for black bodies and black communities to make economic change through political power.
Freedom is choice.
We won't black down.
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 Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?